I feel like nobody talks about your work with Mike Shake enough, because for me, his videos are, I wouldn't say they're like fast paced. They're not Mr. Beast fast paced by any means, but there's like excitement. There's things going on. I had no idea his videos were script. I thought this guy was just doing stuff. And
Well, to caveat
yeah,
that point,
go,
they because I want to like make this point is that
go for it.
there's scripting involved where it's like they plan out what's going to happen and afterwards they write voiceover to tie it together. But the stuff that he's doing, because like I've sat there and I've watched the raw footage of him doing like all this different stuff. He is doing all of this stuff, and he never fakes any successes, any failures. Like the one that sticks out in my head, and sorry to like jump the gun because maybe this will come up, but like there's one skill that he was doing in one video where he was like trying to do this pool trick shot. And he sincerely spent 5 days doing the same motion over and over and over again until he got it, which was just like nice. I was glad to like get that peek behind the curtain and not be disappointed and through, oh, he actually does all of this stuff. So yes, we can talk more about how the scripting works, but just to say like he does do all of the stuff genuinely.
Yeah, 100%. I do believe he does this crazy stuff. Like, I don't have the patience to do all this he does. I'm like giving up the first 1 to 5 times. So I definitely do think he does this stuff, just like Mr. Beast obviously does his stunts. I think the way I was trying to phrase it was like with these, I'll just call them action-packed because there's so much going on. These action-packed videos where it doesn't seem like there's any research, there's no scripting. It's just a full-blown story of seeing someone go from A to B via trial, error, etc. Like Mr. Beast, it's like he's hiring writers. I'm like, what are they writing?
Yeah.
Because he's just doing stuff in the moment. So that's kind of what I meant. Love you, Mike Shake. You're not faking anybody. But yeah, what was it like working with him exactly? Like, what was your behind the curtain work exactly?
Sure. Yeah, that was working with Mike was a real turning point for me. Like that was probably I've worked with loads of incredible people, but I mean just by the nature of what he does, it was the most fun stuff that I've ever worked on. But a real departure from how I'd written things in the past. So anything educational, it's like, you know, the creator you're working with, or if it's you, you know, you'll kind of think of like a brief, roughly what you want to talk about. Maybe you'll structure out a few bullet points, and then you'll kind of expand around those points as far as you want to do. Maybe some people prefer less detail, more bullet points. I'm not here to judge, although you should script word for word, and that's absolutely definite. But no, you do however much you want to. But the difference working with the entertainment stuff is they will plan what they want to do to a fairly good degree, where they know like, okay, locations, if they're going out and doing crazy stuff in different spots around the city, or there's going to be other people involved, there's a lot more coordination of bodies and times and all of that kind of thing. That's not really on me. All I get is basically they've planned it, they've gone, they've filmed what they can, sticking as close to what they think is going to happen. And then what actually happens turns up in a huge Dropbox folder on my desk. And I have the plan that they've drawn up on one side, I've got the Dropbox folder on the other, and then it's like, okay, make this make sense. But just so you know, points 2 and 3, this thing blew up 10 hours before it was meant to, or this person who we would like, there was one creator, this is again like slight tangent, but like another entertainment-based creator who they were like, oh, we'd centered our whole video on this guy who we were going to hire, who was like an expert in the thing that this video was about. And the whole like plot was centered on him. And then when we turned up on location, he was like the most boring, uninteresting guy that we ever seen. And so we had to last minute, like on the fly, figure out a way to just completely rework the story, because it just couldn't be based on him. And so point being, some things in the plan don't work out. They take longer. Sometimes a skill Mike would think would be really, really difficult would actually be really easy. And so that would kind of throw things a bit. But essentially my job as a writer was to stick as closely as possible to that plan, literally watch through the footage that got sent, every single piece of it, 2x speed, because sometimes it will be, 4, 5, 6 hours of footage, and then write voiceover to tie it together. Or maybe it would be, because ultimately you're trying to entertain people, and there's this line where you don't want to make anything fake, but you might, for the sake of just keeping an audience engaged, you might swap the order that two things happen. Like if Mike's doing 24 skills, which he sometimes will do in a single video, it'll be like, okay, it's kind of going to be a bummer if, like skill number 19 or whatever is like done like that and really boring. This isn't like a specific thing that happened, by the way, but it's like we might rearrange that and put that in number 7 or something like that. But yeah, so it's kind of just, rather than having a completely blank canvas with which you can create anything, it's like we have this specific footage and now we need to mold it into a story, which was just really fun and really different.
Dude, that sounds so difficult.
And difficult.
Not like in a bad way, but I'm like thinking of all that goes into that. I mean, again, writing in itself is already hard. Because like what you described basically sounds like what it is to make a movie. It's like you get all the film, now it's like up to the writers and the editors put it together. And I can't even imagine going through just hours of footage and going like, okay, this goes here, the viewer's gonna love this. Because I wish I would have put this example in the notes because it just came up to me, but do you know, for your agency, you gave people like a little take home, right? And one of them was a mic shake video, and I think it was like something about trying to attempt to beat Olympians' best scores and times or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that I could not answer it the best I could. You're like, at what point in the video is the drop off? Because for the longest time, I think for the first 4 to 6 minutes, he spent so much time on I think it was Serena Williams' challenge, the tennis challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I think the drop off is spending too much time on this, but not too sure. So like, with these kinds of videos, how do you even know what people are going to click off of or drop off of exactly?
Yeah, it's really difficult. And the joy of like that question that I put in was that people, it wasn't even as much about getting it right. It was just seeing what people's rationale was for things, because it can be really hard to tell. Like it could just depend on which particular people watched the video on that occasion, that like maybe everyone by chance was really into tennis and so was happy to watch Mike playing tennis for 4 minutes, when a different subset of his audience might have gotten bored early and blah, blah, blah. I think it's ultimately just about trial and error to a point and just figuring out what it is that your audience is there for and what it is that they like. With that particular one, I'm trying to think what ultimately it's like. It's sometimes there's a bit of reverse engineering involved. So we found with that one was that the retention kind of dipped a little bit after that skill had finished. And I think it was ultimately because we figured out, okay, even though this tennis bit was like, maybe a little bit on the long side, people seem to keep watching, but then they stopped watching afterwards. So then you're thinking like, why is that? And it's like, you kind of have to just zoom out and think, okay, where did that 4 minutes sit in the context of this overall video? And what can we read from the rest of the retention graph to make sense of this particular portion of it? But by taking the whole thing into consideration. And what it seemed like was the fact that people were dipping after that segment was because we were then like looking at the tennis segment thinking, was it something in here that people weren't willing to put themselves through a second time, if it is the fact that they have left after this first bit? And we realized that at the end of the tennis bit, Mike basically doesn't achieve the thing that he set out to do. And so we started to think, oh, okay, so maybe this is an issue with payoffs, where even though the clue is not in that segment, the problem is in that segment. And so it's just a lot of lateral thinking and like a lot of just looking at your graphs week after week. And then if that's your hypothesis, thinking, right, okay, in the next video, we will either, cut a skill. If he doesn't achieve it properly, we just won't include it in the video because that won't be satisfying. Or we'll try something else that can maybe address it in some way. So it is really hard, but it is just repetition, trying to isolate specific variables and thinking, right, if we change that next time, what's going to happen? But yeah, that was a hard question that I put in the thing. So there's no harm in not having got it right. Or maybe you did get it right. I can't remember.
I don't think so.
Okay.
So